Y'all, we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks so much for coming out. We really appreciate it. Part of the fun of Saving Acworth History is not only the opportunity to save history, but we learn so much as we go along. And we also recognize as the years go by that some of the things we recollect aren't exactly as we thought they were. That's just part of life. So it's fun to have interaction where some of the things we'll show you tonight, you may know about it, you may know more, which will be good. I'll tell you how this came about. Well, let me say this. A lot of people think of North Acworth as residential and a big cemetery, which is in a few businesses. It's not that far off. But the truth is, Butch Price mentioned recently, at one time, North Acworth was a major business center of Acworth. And so we're going to show you some of those businesses that were here back in the day. And the inspiration for this tonight came from Jimmy Daniel. One day he said, you know, Acworth has a historic district, they have a Parkside district, and a Mill Village district. He said, but there's a lot on the north side of town that needs to be remembered, needs to be saved. So that's when they kind of started it. And then they said, well, why don't we just do a part of the speaker presentation? So that's what got us to this point. So we call it North Acworth in the Liberty Hill area, starting at the Mary McCall overpass, going north on Main Street. This picture was taken right here at Collins Avenue. The McCall family lived down on the left on Collins Avenue. But what we're going to talk about is the North Acworth area, and it's defined by Main Street to the east, or to the west, to the east. Lake Allatoona to the west. The north is the Bartow County line, and then the south is Highway 92 to the new 92 bridge here. So this is the area that we're talking about. So these slides we're going to go through, first we're going to go right up Main Street and show about 7 businesses that were on Main Street. And then we're going to finish up the Girl Scout camp that was over here. And then we're going to come back to Lakewood Drive and the cemetery, and then finish up at Dallas Landing. So that's the sequence of what we're going to be going through. And it's going to be myself and Jimmy Daniel and Betsy Brown, and also Rick Keenel is going to talk about his grandfather started Unique Knitting. And Kurt Johnston, where's Kurt? Oh, there you are. And Kurt's going to talk about several of the items as well. So it's kind of like a group presentation. If anybody doesn't recognize this, you're not really an Acworth. This has been the scene for many, many years. So with that, Betsy can talk about some of the history of the Mainery.
Yeah. Well, I grew up, of course, on Lakewood Drive, but then it was actually Old Dallas Road. I remember the Maynard family. They actually lived in the house, the frame house that was across from the fire station when it later came there. But as I was, thinking about Bob Maynard, who was, Robbie was Bob Jr., and was born to Bob and Ava, his mother, late in life. But when Bob built that building, and it was the liquor store, of course, I think Robbie said that was 1938.
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's when the building was built. Yeah.
Right. And that was just, I think, a year before we could sell, the county became wet. So Bob was a really great businessman. And the other thing I thought about is that at the time that Bob built that building, that was Old Dallas Road, which had been Dallas Road. It, went straight across the lake. The lake wasn't there. You went down to where the six-way would, go down to Dallas Landing, and you cross Proctor Creek on a bridge. And you could still see, when the water's down, the pilings of that bridge. So here was Bob, great businessman, who built his liquor store at the intersection of the Dixie Highway and Dallas Road.
Betsy, I can show them if you didn't follow some of that, but this, of course, there's 92. This is Lakewood Drive. This was Old Dallas Highway that went right here before the lake was built, and now it's Church Road. What's the Church Road? And then Dallas Highway. So the point she's making is the Mainers built the store right at the intersection of Dallas Highway and the old Dixie Highway. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. And let's see, the county went dry again in 1939 and was dry until 1972, where there was a very close vote, about 2,000 votes, that passed the liquor. So we could buy liquor again. In the meantime, there were a number, and we'll talk about them later, there were a number of beer joints up towards Bartow County that kept on selling beer. And according to Tim and some other experts on beer and package stores, this was the era of package stores where you couldn't buy liquor, but you could buy beer. Anyway, and so those businesses sort of flourished, I guess, in this time.
And Robbie actually lived upstairs, or his family at the time he was born. They went to the hospital for his birth while he was upstairs, and the upstairs has not changed. It's still, the bed and the shoes by the bed of his dad are still there. Also, they mentioned it was broken into, one of the stories of Acworth, it was broken into. They went through the roof, stole a bunch of cases of liquor, called the police, found them within 2 hours. I think it was in Paulding County. He was drunk as a skunk, right sitting beside all of his liquor cases that he stole. They found them real quick. What today is the Rustic Ruby, just going a little bit north of Robbie's gas place, Rustic Ruby, but what it used to be back in the day was Jim Ship's Gulf Station. I don't know a lot about it. Jimmy mentioned.
Yeah, I think that's at least the first one that I know of was the first boat storage on Lake Altena. It was associated with his store. Now, I don't think those doors have been open in years, so there's no telling what's behind those doors. But it would be interesting to find out.
Sounds like a TV show.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have anything to add about Jim Ship's Gulf Station? I don't know much about it.
Well, Jim Ship's sister was the Johnson of Johnson.
Johnson
Drive-In.
Yes, that's right. Okay. All right.
That was his second service station. His first service station was located on Cherokee Street in the little white block building near Logan Road,
Oh.
where the community center is now.
Okay.
Yes.
So you had two at one time, or
He moved.
well, one then the other? Okay, cool, good. Okay, now going on up north, continuing north on Main Street. Next, you get to the Folklore Haunted House, and I think most people know what these used to be. Unique Knitting Company. Everybody knows the old mill whistle used to blow at noon every day. We all heard the mill whistle at noon. This picture does not do it justice. It was a sprawling compound. It was a pretty big complex here. And this was a major focal point of business in North Acworth in that era. So with that, Rick. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. So you got it.
Okay, well, a little bit and all, but as Alan was saying, this is before the new office front that was added, probably about 1964 time frame. That's what the original building was when it was built. And of course, as you was talking about the water whistle and all, and they also did the New Year's Eve at midnight with whistle there. But my grandfather came down in about 1926. He actually the mill was started in 1915 in Philadelphia, and he was having labor problems, and came down here and went to Newton, Georgia. They had asked him to come down to see if they wanted to locate it in Newnan, and just coincidentally where my bride is from. But he, on the way back on the train, everything was pretty well done by then. Someone suggested that he come to Acworth and talk to the mayor here and all, and they made a deal and so forth where there used to be a cotton field prior to having a knitting mill there, and they gave him the land, and so he moved down here and he started to build in the 1926 time frame and opened the mill in 1927. and it was in operation until 1982 when it was closed. But basically hired and employed anywhere from about 120 over the years to a maximum of about 200 at one point in time. The business was somewhat seasonal. They had two peak periods, what they referred to as the back-to-school peak and the Christmas peak, where they got more business and so forth, or at least the people, the wholesalers that we sold to, and the retailers, Penny's, Sears, and such, would order more there. So they had to build an inventory leading up, after the Christmas peak for about 6 months until they started delivering back-to-school stuff. But I learned the picture down below is every year they used to have a Christmas party, mainly, as I recall anyway, it was in what they call the finishing room. And the children were invited, they had small gifts and such. And eventually, I'm not sure exactly what year, probably late 50s, probably early 60s, they asked the employees, well, would you rather continue to have these, or would you rather have the money, as a bonus or whatever that it took to do that? And the employees chose to take the cash instead. And but anyway, those were certainly good times. And when we were really a community, and you might not know everybody, but you knew of everybody. And I know, personally speaking, I started working there in the summers about 1965 or so. And a lot of my work ethic I got from the employees up at Unique. They had a system where, today everybody's either paid a salary, so much per week or whatever, or so much per hour. About 60+% of the people at Unique, until they closed, we had what we call production rates, and you got paid according to how productive you are, how many socks you could either knit or they call it looping to close the seam of the toes, and burying or putting packaging on to deliver them to the customer and so forth. And just continuing on around. I like this picture. I do not know who the two ladies are in the picture, though. I would have to say that was probably in the 1940s or something like that. But anyway, I got a lot of good memories from it.
Rick, what was the relationship between Unique Knitting and the Mill Village? Was Unique a customer of getting cotton?
No, we did not get in. No, Mill Village was pretty much Coates and Clark, and prior to Coates and Clark, the Masons, Albert, and your next door, I think, almost next door neighbors and so forth, way back. Their parents were the ones that actually, they moved down from the north, and that was so true of a lot of things. The New England and the North back up until the 1930s or so, that was the home of just about all the textile industry and so forth. And then they all started, coming south for the cheaper labor and such, but North Carolina in particular. But we got most of our yarns and everything from mills, yarn mills in North Carolina.
Okay.
So.
Because I know Acworth was a cotton town from the
it
Civil
was
War till the Depression.
Just we didn't have the finished products from yarns and everything
Yeah.
that we used. But of course, it made a big difference too when all the synthetics came in, using the old cotton and so forth, and started having the nylons and all the other orlons and a lot of other stuff.
Tell us about the fish knit stockings, specialized.
The fish. We have a machine that's called a CK8 machine. It was made in Reading, Pennsylvania. We mainly use those to make a lot of argyles with. There was a period of time, and I'm guessing here, ladies may remember when fishnet hose was popular. I believe it was in the late 60s, early 70s time frame. But they took a while to make it. We use those on machines to make fishnet hose with. All the machines, they had different gauges, to make different types of socks and so forth. But I would say on average, the average machine can make the average size sock that had a heel and a toe in it, about 5 dozen per shift. And some of the machines, depending on how business was, those CKA machines that were very popular and everything, those ran 3 shifts, 3 8-hour shifts a day. So they were just all, around the clock, at least 5 days a week doing that. So, but some of them could do that. The knee highs, you can only make about 3.5 dozen per shift. And, tube socks, when they came into being, because they didn't have a heel in them, wherever you had a heel, and the machines had to reciprocate instead of just going in one direction the whole time. So that's what cut your production down. Priced it accordingly, so forth. But any other questions?
Rick, tell us where your grandfather lived.
Oh, in Acworth?
Yeah.
Okay,
People
right up here on
probably-
Main Street, 50, 50. Oh gosh, I'm trying to think of. Anyway, it's the last driveway heading north on Main Street before you get to Collins Avenue. It's a long driveway, you can't even see the house from the street.
Yeah, I bet people pass by and don't know
But
there's a lovely house down
It
there.
has 2 little granite entrance legs there. It was cut down a tree and had a big rope hanging there, or I don't know what all was going on with that. Was going on with that, they've removed it since.
They sealed the driveway.
The what now?
They sealed the driveway.
Oh,
That's
still,
why
okay,
they blocked it
okay.
off.
Well, I know they cut down a tree too, and I don't know if that had something to do with it, but anyway, it was just to go over there for 4th of July parties, and we'd get our fireworks back in those days from, there was a place up in Grizzletown, a fireworks place, and I cannot remember the name of that to save my life. It was on Kruger's Landing, just about a quarter of a mile in on the left, and I cannot remember. If anybody can tell me, I'd appreciate it. But anyway,
All right, thanks, Rick. Thanks. All right, keep moving north. Right across the street from Unique is today the Acworth Floor Center. And many of us remember in one period, the 60s, 70s, whatever, it was Acme Lumber Company. So,
Well, Acme Lumber Company, and I found this in an article from 1947, actually came in, the original name of it was the J.K. Lumber Company. And they did a consolidation of Marietta and Kennesaw and brought it up here to Acworth and opened a much larger location. And the reason they did that is they had a special machine here called the Vonnegut molder. And they could take a 12-inch piece of wood and mold it into custom molding that they used in houses. So that's how they got started there. Eventually it became Acme, but they made their own doors, they made their own custom molding, they made everything at that one location. I spent a lot of time there with my father because my father did a lot of work for Hubert Allen in his Allen store. He had about 15 around the North Georgia. But he built a lot of the counters and stuff, and that's where we got all the wood from, was from Acme. When it became Acme from JK, I don't really know. Actually, Rick's uncle was involved with bringing it here to Acworth. But it was bought at some point by, I think his name's Gene Rickman. And Gene Rickman passed away about 2 years ago. And he had it for a long time. And the rumor is that when the current mayor moved to Acworth, he actually worked for Acme Lumber for a while.
He did.
So there's a lot of tie-in, not only from a history standpoint, but also from current also. But that was a thriving business up until the Home Depots and the Lowe's and that kind of stuff kind of killed them. But it was a very thriving business up there. And adjacent to it was the Mashburn Junkyard, which back when people used to work on their own cars, that's where they would go and sometimes buy parts. I'm sure that Mac and Dallas had probably both bought parts up there, along with a lot of other folks in there too. So But that's kind of the story of Acme, the Reader's Digest version of it.
All right, now keep going north on the opposite side of the street. This is right before you get to the Valero station. And this today is Auto Perfection Motors. Notice the glass block here on the side and in front, because it's still there today. Well, it is today, but from what it used to be, Steve's place. Many of you know the name Steve Sulis, Steve and Betty Sulis. Betty worked for Dad for decades. But this was Steve's place. Does anybody have any extra history to add before this?
Great hot dogs.
Great hot dogs?
It was great hot dogs.
Well, I'll tell you,
Yes.
one thing really interesting about it is he had a very interesting marketing concept. And his marketing concept was a dancing bear that he had beside the place. And this is a picture of Let Marchman feeding the dancing bear. And this became an iconic memory of Main Street north of Acworth. I don't know.
Back before PETA.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know.
Sounded like a good idea at the time.
Yeah, okay. All right, now back across the street, and this is directly across the street from the Valero station today. And this was Uncle Bish's Tavern. This is a picture of where it is today, and here's a close-up. We don't have a picture of Uncle Bish's Tavern, but we do have a picture of him standing in front of the building back in the day on the left. And he owned a lot of pieces of property, and there's Bish Road right next to Alley Cassidy Brick. So it came from Uncle Bish. Now, the Save Acworth History Foundation has this document that's really cool, and it says, Uncle Bish and Pabst Blue Ribbon salute the following citizens of this community who are now serving in the armed forces of the country. There are a lot of old family names of Acworth in this list. It's too many to go through, but there are a lot of them you would recognize. One in particular jumped out was Aubrey Chandler. Not only did he own the barbershop that everybody was familiar with back in the 60s and 70s, but he was also the mayor of Acworth at one time. And then moving right on down on the same side of the street, right at the Bartow County line, was the Frosty Treat. I don't have a lot of information about this. I know Sylvia Flanagan, Ben Flanagan's wife, her mother owned this for a period. And she said she thought this was probably the first fast food drive-in in Acworth. And they were known for really good food. A lot of us went there.
So is she saying that this preceded Johnson's? I don't know.
She didn't say the dates, but
I think it did.
Yeah,
she
okay.
believes it did. Yeah. Okay, and from here, we'll head over to Hunter's Cove subdivision, and this is where the Girl Scout camp was. Now, we were just right here at Lucille Avenue, where the Frosty Treat was. And you come down Lucille Avenue, and it did dead end, right where the Girl Scout camp was. And Mr. Price and I drove back there. It was a fun afternoon, and to learn a lot about it. So where it stopped was the pavement stopped right there at Lucille, and the gravel road went on past into the camp. The residences were on the right, the summer lodge was on the left. And if you took a left, there's another gate that's still there today, and that's the Winter Lodge. Now, all of this is now the Corps of Engineers. Most of this is the Corps of Engineers. There are houses back here, but this is what it looked like today. And so this is where the pavement stopped, and then the gravel road went straight ahead, and this is where you had the residences on the right and the summer lodge on the left. And then they also had the beach somewhere down here on Lake Allatoona. But it was great because I tried to find out something about it at the camp. I couldn't find out anything. And somebody said, Butch Price and Joe used to live there in the camp. So he was actually, when he first came to Acworth, was a caretaker of the Girl Scout camp. And it was a day camp only. It wasn't overnight, it was a day camp. And Butch...
They could spend the night.
Oh, they did? Okay. Anything you want to add about this?
Now, they had a camp down in Mapleton, and I cannot remember the name of it, but I think a lot of the troops out of Atlanta would go there. Scout Haven, for whatever reason, did not have a lot of attraction to the Scouts. Joe and I lived on the place for 2 years, and we probably checked in 20, maybe 30 troops over a 2-year period. They mostly came on weekends, Friday night, Saturday night, and my responsibility as caretaker was cut the grass and check in the troops and then give them the things that they wanted, like canoes and paddle boats, and we had archery and.
I guess this was really considered the country back in the day, so
Yeah.
the attraction, of the two, this was the one on the lake, which was a good attraction. But you mentioned it wasn't real busy, there wasn't a whole lot of activity.
Well, 10 years before that, when I would have gone, it was very busy. There were camps every week during the summer.
Yeah, I think that camp in Mapleton took a lot of,
Maybe it opened after that.
yeah, I think it did.
Okay.
But the Girl Scouts had leased the land from the Corps of Engineers, and once it closed down, the Corps of Engineers said, we'll wipe everything out and go back to being the woods, which it was.
We lived for 2 years on our own resort. We had a 40-acre plot. Had our own private beach, boats, paddle boats. I caught a lot of fish.
That's sweet.
Do you
All
know,
right.
I'm sorry, do you know what years the camp was running?
When we moved into the community, it was 64, so it was running prior to that. I couldn't tell you how many years,
Oh,
and I couldn't tell
I
you.
went there when I was like 8 years old, and that would have been almost 70 years ago.
And it was called Scout.
Scout Haven, yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, I grew up there too. I was a Girl Scout camp. You got 2 sisters and your mom's a scout leader. So I spent many summers up there camping out. And the beach was just where that the last little greenhouse, if you go to due west of it, that's where the beach was at. There's remnants of the beach is still there.
Yes, you can still see it from the lake, if you know where it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, now we'll head back down Main Street to, this is the intersection of Lakewood Drive and Main Street. Of course, this has been vacant for quite a while now. Before we start talking about the past, just as a quick commercial, Ace Hardware is coming there very shortly. So
That's where Johnson's used to be.
You're jumping ahead.
I just remember the chicken. That's what I remember.
I remember
Great fried-
cheeseburgers at Johnson's.
Great fried chicken.
So Betsy?
Well, and this was even something after, that came after I grew up on Lakewood Drive. And of course, at that point, it was Old Alice Road. And my earliest memories, my parents and I lived with my grandparents, who were the Brinkleys, and the Owens, lived down there. But my dad was in the service, and he was not only in World War II, he was, soon after he came home, he was redrafted somehow and had to go to the Korean War. So he actually served in 2 wars. And we lived with my grandparents while he was gone. And the house that I grew up in till I was 7 or 8 is still there. It's the first house, little cottage frame house that sits up on the hill on the right. Of course, when I was growing up, right there was Jim Ship's junkyard. And it was a huge junkyard that encompassed and went all the way to Cemetery, a good bit of the way down Cemetery. He also had some chicken houses down there, and it came up behind my grandparents' house. And I spent a lot of time in old junk cars in that junkyard. And Jim Ship would come over and tell my parents that I was going to get stung or carried off if they didn't keep me out of that junkyard. So anyway, so that was Jim Ship. And Jim Ship also, as I said, was the sister, his sister was the Johnson, and I don't know the father's name, somebody, but I think they moved up here about in the early 60s, and went right to Lakewood, because that was when that Lakewood Heights was being developed. It's when the Johnsons came up. And within a year or two of having arrived here, they opened the restaurant. And I don't think anybody could have told them, they couldn't have been prepared for the success that it was. It was absolutely mind-boggling. You know, it was like the teenagers in Acworth had nothing to do until Johnson's, you know, came along. And it was the place. Everybody knows that, right?
That's a good one. It's like the original soda fountain.
It was the place. I mean, the Frosty Treat may have been down there and they could have been busy, but that was absolutely the place to be. And of course, as quickly as it came to be popular, it sort of faded away. And Mac Turner reminded me of something the other day, that in another decade or so after that, it would be the first home of Daddy's Country Cooking. Yeah, remember that too. Yeah.
Now the building on the left, wasn't that like a salon, hair salon or something?
It probably was something before then, but it was mostly, a hair salon. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the picture's dated with looks like a '64 Mustang there.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and of course you can see that by, let's see, is that, behind it, is that the fire station? So the fire station is already there, and that came along, that was in Johnson's, and then was the fire station, and then my grandparents' house. But that was Red Rock Fire Station.
Okay.
And, you know, that's, right, and there's my house right there.
Yeah, this is the house that Betsy grew up in, next to the fire, the old.
And, you know, it's sort of mystifying about, you know, that it was the Red Rock, and Red Rock community actually is across the 4-lane. But at some point, of course, you could have gone that way before the lake, you know, came along. So, yeah, those, and we talked about what changes have been made to it's now the Underwater Rescue Training Center, I think, for Cook County.
I think they call it Special Operations, but I've seen SWAT team trucks there and underwater rescue and some other stuff.
Right. And of course, as back then, when I was growing up there, it was a dirt road. And it was a dirt road all the way out to, as far as I can remember going, and past the 6-way, but not all the way, of course, to the lake. There was actually an African-American community. It was one of the ones that probably has, you know, been forgotten. But I remember, you know, several houses up there and going to visit some of the folks up there. Also, you know, Bob Mayer lived here, and his business partner was Fred Lewis. And some of you may remember Fred Lewis from different businesses. That he also was a great businessman. But they started, Bob had the liquor store, but their business together was liquid propane. And that a lot of people back then had these big tanks, you know, outside their houses, and that's the way that they heated their houses, was with propane. And Bob and Fred did that for quite a long time.
Great, thanks. Okay, now, Liberty Hill Cemetery, Kurt's gonna talk about it.
Does anybody here know, because the cemetery and there was a church there called the Liberty Hill Church at one time. Does anybody know which was named for which? In other words, was the church named for Liberty Hill, or was Liberty Hill named for the church? I don't know. I was not able to find anything out about that. So what I do know is that the cemetery was never originally supposed to be the graveyard for the Liberty Hill Church. It existed separately. As far as I could find out, the cemetery was first opened around 1821 or so. And the Liberty Hill Church was not organized until 1840. And it sat on the eastern side of the cemetery property, right where the cemetery road comes into North Main Street, somewhere in there. Didn't you tell me you saw some ruins, Betsy, from the old church over there?
Yeah, right at that first entrance.
Right,
cemetery.
right. So, anyway, I don't know. If anybody knows, I'd love to hear it, because I don't have a clue. There are 9 cemeteries in Acworth, and Liberty Hill is the largest one. I couldn't find out what the acreage is, but currently contains about 3,700 burials, known burials. And there are probably a bunch that are not known. And the oldest graves tend to be located, of course, near the eastern side of the church, near Main Street. That seems to be where you see most of them. As far as the hill itself, when I walk around up there, I don't really see graves up there that are much older than the 1930s, maybe, the 1940s. That's certainly the newer area, and it's been moving that way for 200 years. Some of the names in the cemetery of some of the old Acworth families that are buried there are Abbott, Armstrong, Autry, Chastain, Collins, Cowan, Harrison, Lemon, Litchfield, McLean, McKeever, McMillan, Northcutt, Orr, Ragsdale, Smith, and Stokely. And the church itself, I'll throw this in, Liberty Hill Baptist Church the original one was a log structure. And it was destroyed by Union troops in 1864. And then in 1864, it was renamed the Acworth Baptist Church. And it was rebuilt on the same spot in 1866. It was then moved to its present location on Main Street in 1872 and was renamed the First Baptist Church of Acworth in 1946. Let's see.
That land was 17.15 acres. There's 17.15.
17? Okay, thank you. Let's see here. This is trivia. The earliest known date of birth on one of the markers is Jane Davis Bennett, September 17th, 1799, died December 14th, 1868. The earliest known date of death on a marker is 1821, and I couldn't find out who that was.
Could you repeat this one more time, please?
About Jane Bennett? Yeah. She is the earliest known date of birth in the cemetery. September 17th, 1799, and she died December 14th, 1868. And her name was Jane Davis Bennett. Now that's as far as facts about the cemetery. That's about what I got. There's one other thing that's going on with this right now as far as the Save Acworth board, and I sort of stumbled on this probably 2 or 3 years ago. I've always been interested ever since we moved here in 1955. We were some of the first damn Yankees in Acworth.
And here you are.
Here I am, and here I'm probably going to stay over at Liberty Hill there. My grandfather referred to Liberty Hill as Boot Hill. Anyway, I was always interested in whether or not there had been Civil War fighting in and around Acworth. And a few years ago, I was on the internet and I stumbled on this. The engagement at Brownlow's Hill. And I said, and it was in Acworth. And it took place, I wasn't sure where, but I did some reading on it. Some people had posted things about it, some historians. And they said that it took place on a high hill in Acworth. So at the time, I was thinking, okay, how many high hills are there? There's Mitchell Hill, which is pretty high, Summit Circle, and I didn't even think of Liberty Hill at the time. But then recently, I started digging more into it, and I discovered that Liberty Hill might possibly be the site of a Federal cavalry regiment and a Confederate artillery battery battle about June 3rd, 1864. And it's called Brownlow's Hill. It was not a local name. Nobody in Acworth called it Brownlow's Hill because the name came from the commanding officer of the Union cavalry regiment that made the attack. and nobody in Acworth knew or really cared about, this guy Brownlow. But the interesting part about this unit, it's the 1st Regiment of Tennessee Volunteer Cavalry. They were Union troops because the northeastern part of Tennessee was full of people who did not believe in secession. And a lot of those people joined the Union Army. So this unit was a well-known elite cavalry unit. And they were part of Sherman's column coming over from Dallas. And as far as I can tell, I've only found one map that really shows much of the movement and detail on this area over here where the cemetery is from the 1860s. They were coming in from Dallas from the west. They were also coming down what would have been called the Acworth Road, or Main Street, from the north. And there was a history of the 1st Regiment of Tennessee Cavalry written by a guy named W.R. Carter in the 1880s. And Carter was a veteran. He was in that unit, and he was a veteran of this, and he was there. And it makes interesting reading. So on or about June 3rd, 1864, and I'm just going to read this quickly. This is an excerpt. The Army, the Union Army, advanced with McCook's division on the left of Schofield's corps, and in this position moved forward and took possession of the Dallas and Acworth roads. We remained near this place, holding this part of our line, reconnoitering and picketing heavily the country some distance from our position. In the advance on Acworth, we found the enemy in force and ready for a fight. As we approached the town, the 1st Tennessee, being in the advance, found the enemy strongly posted on a high hill. Well, the only high hill in that area that I can find is Liberty Hill. And after considerable skirmishing, Colonel Brownlow led his regiment in a charge, drove the enemy back, and captured the hill. This was the key to the position, and the Confederates, knowing its importance, made several attempts to recapture it, but were unsuccessful and fell back, leaving the 1st Tennessee in possession of the hill. The skill and courage displayed by Colonel Brownlow in capturing and holding this important place, and the equal determination of the enemy to retake it, made it a noted place, so much so that we called it Brownlow's Hill, in honor of the gallant commander of the 1st Tennessee. After we had captured the hill, one section of Lilly's battery, Lilly's artillery battery, was sent forward, and from its summit, the enemy's lines were shelled for some time. And a note on Lilly's battery. This was the 18th Indiana Light Artillery Battery under the command of none other than Captain Eli Lilly, the founder of the Eli Lilly Pharmaceutical Corporation. I have 2 sources that I've been using for this. One is a copy that's online of Carter's book about the history of the 1st Tennessee Cavalry Regiment. The other is a book that I got off of AVE that was written in 1975 about the 18th Indiana Light Artillery. And both of those things corroborate Brownlow's Hill. There's some discrepancy in some of the dates and the times and all that, but they cross over. So we, I guess the board, and mainly me, I'm going to pursue this and see what I can find out with local historians and KSU and whoever I can find, and see where we can take this. If it turns out to be real, we might have a plaque or something. Who knows?
Very interesting. Thank you. Two other things about this. One is if you go to the city government's website, go to the clerk's office, there's an interactive site where you can see who is buried in every grave in the Acworth Cemetery. It is fascinating. All the families, we've got reservations there. All 4 of our grandparents are there. So, anyway, the other thing is, just a little twisted humor here. Jimmy also made the comment when we were talking about Acworth had the Parkside Historic District and Mill Village District. He said, they're all gonna end up here anyway. A little sick, a little twisted. Okay, we'll keep going here. We know we don't have a lot of time left. If anybody can recognize what used to be here, this was taken on Cove Street, looking down towards Hudson Street. Hudson Street is one of the 6-way stop intersection right there at Lakewood Drive. And if anybody knows what was there, congratulations on living a long life. This was the original drive-in theater. This was the Lakes Drive-In Theater. It was owned by Red Hudson. He also owned the Legion Theater on Main Street in downtown Acworth. Now, the Lake Allatoona was built in 1950, so this obviously was built after that with the name Lakes. But it was only open about 5 years or so, maybe from around.
It opened in 55, and I think it closed in 62.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a question for you. That looking over the crowd, I don't think anybody's old enough to answer this question, but how many of you have actually seen a complete movie at the theater? Well, I know, but you were like 3 or 4 years old.
You saw it from front to back, you saw the whole movie.
I was in, okay, I
Are you
had a pillow in the
insinuating
back seat.
No, I'm just
But I was there for the entire movie. And my father was good enough not to drive off with the speaker still texting. Which a lot of people forgot about and did.
I showed this to my 33-year-old son, and he went, drive-in theater, what's that? I've never heard of that. So this is what they look like. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
pulled your car up, and put the speaker in the window, rolled it up, and then walked over into the building and got some popcorn.
Well, my father used to run the reels for Red Hudson on the weekends, Friday and Saturday. So when I was 6, 7 years old, got to go see a lot of movies now. I don't remember which ones, but the hot dogs were great at the concession stand. And but it was also later on after it closed. If you remember the terraces at the Cars Park, I'd go over there with a bunch of buddies and ride dirt bikes and jump on the terraces. And the poles were still there along with a few of the speakers. This was after the screen had been torn down.
Well, we moved to the neighborhood in '64, and it was run down. I mean, it's gone, and went to theaters by then. So,
If I had to imagine, I would say that he probably sold that property to, if I had to guess, maybe Bobby Jones.
probably so.
That's what I think.
But we came across this picture from the late, well, obviously, the cemeteries up here, the neighborhood, Lakewood Heights had not been built yet, but this is an aerial picture taken in the 50s, which was pretty cool to prove where it was.
Another trivia
Because
question.
you can see Cove Street here, and there's Hudson Drive.
Another trivia question is what is the longest, which movie had the longest engagement at that theater?
Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, that was my first thought. Gone with the Wind.
Thunder Road.
Boy, that is
I saw the mole people there. Remember the mole people?
Oh, yeah, I remember. They had all those horror movies.
That's great. Thunder Road, wow.
Thing.
Okay, now, Lakewood Heights subdivision, you know, I showed you earlier in North Acworth 2, there was the other subdivision, there was this one. These are, you know, one or two, probably the first subdivisions built on Lake Allatoona. This is, we call it the 6-way because there are 6 stop signs there. This is an aerial view. Now you can see this is the 6-way right here. This is where the drive-in theater was. So the cemetery's over here. You come down Lakewood Drive, and this was Dallas Highway that went right here, and it went straight across what used to not be the lake and became Autry Church Road and Dallas Highway. It was all one road. But you can see the Dallas Landing here at the end and the beach area down here.
Well, Dallas Landing used to be, when it was open, you could go in there and camp. I've done that many times in there. And that you used to go down there and you could run, you could ride a bike, you could do a lot of different things.
Yeah.
But now, during the summer, it's okay, but then after that, it's pretty much closed down, so.
Lakewood Heights subdivision, most people just call it Dallas Landing area now, but Lakewood Heights subdivision had a lot of city officials, business and civic leaders there. 4 mayors lived there, city manager, city attorney, a lot of city aldermen, including Toby Carmichael and Steve Prather, who are here. They live there now. We all live there now. Leaders of Downtown Development Authority, Planning and Zoning, Lake Acworth Authority, and a lot of owners of businesses in Acworth live there, their families. Levi Day's family, Jack Deemer's family with Day Chevrolet, the Keenel family, this is where Bobby and Ricky grew up. Emery Battle's grocery store, the owners of Johnson's Drive-In that you saw a little while ago. Lacey Drug Company, Larry Braden lived there. Acworth Pharmacy, our family. Johnson's Drive-In, Kurt's family. Northcott Christian School founder, Perry Kemp. And the dentist, Dr. Glenn Reed Sr., and of course Toby being lit. So anyway, a lot of very influencers in Acworth, if you will, came from this area. This was just one house, and this was Levi Day's house. This was interesting because back in the day, it used to be, there were only 3 American dealerships, and they would all introduce the new cars on the same day in September every year. They would all come out, and everybody's excited to see what the new cars were. So 2 days before, there would be a bunch of new cars parked in his driveway and his yard. And so we all got to see it like a day or 2 early. And then he would move it over to the lot, and the rest of the world got to see it, so we thought we were special. He also had an amphibious car that he'd take a left and drive down to the lake and just take it into the water. And that was, especially being a kid, seeing that, we just thought that was so cool. This was an article that was written later on about the 2 major subdivisions in North Acworth, Lakewood Heights and Etowah Cove. I thought it was kind of nice. Swimming, fishing, water skiing, wakeboarding, picnics, nature walks, and porch rocking. And this will wind us up here. This is the last one at Dallas Landing. Like Jimmy mentioned, when we were growing up there were tents next to tents next to tents. And they were people, especially on holiday weekend, people would come from Atlanta and just fill it up. And now, of course, it's changed to a day-use area. But it's still pretty special because now, every year, I think maybe April, late May, March, early April.
It's May.
It's actually May.
The wakeboarding's in May.
Okay, anyway, they had the international wakeboarding competition, and if you hadn't seen it, it is something to see. In addition to the wakeboarders and these are the world's best competing, it's very interesting to see. And they also do stuff on the side in between the wakeboarding. They'll have motorcycle jumps and all kinds of stuff. It is extremely fun event to see if you hadn't seen it before. And also the dragon boat races are held every year. I saw them like last year for the first time, and there was the Mayor's Cup race where Tommy Alligood, the mayor of Acworth, competed against the mayor of, I think it was Austell. Austell won, so I accused Tommy of throwing it, because he's such a nice guy. He threw the race, I'm sure. But anyway, it's just a neat area. And pretty much that wraps it up. So it's been fun doing the research and finding these pictures and stuff, and I hope you all enjoyed it.
I want to say one thing, and this is about Butch Price. There's 5 people here that were in your last 7th grade history class at Acworth Elementary. Alan, Kurt, myself, Ernestine, and Jim Owens. But you were our history teacher. So it's stuck, I guess.
Your wife was our English teacher.
Yeah.
Hey, Jimmy, I think you were there 3 years, weren't you?
Let me count, I can't remember.
7th grade, the best 3 years.
That's right.
My favorite statistic was Butch Price was only 22 years old when he was teaching us.
Yeah.
It was just yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
True.
Yeah.
And Butch hadn't changed a lick.
Anyway, thank y'all so much for coming out, supporting Save Acworth History.